And ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the prosecution is not going to get that man today. No, because I'm going to get him.
This is the Hagmann Report for today. It's Tuesday, April 23rd, 2013. I'm Doug Hagmann. With me in studio is my son, my co-host, Joe Hagmann. Together, we are the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. It's good to be back in studio. It's good to be back with you folks. Be prepared for 3 hours of intense news analysis and information that you need in these very perilous times. I want to thank you for joining us. We broadcast, for the new listeners out there just joining us, we broadcast live each and every weeknight from 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern Time, and oftentimes we have special shows like we did this past weekend. So I want to thank you for joining us for those shows as well. You can find us on the internet at HomelandSecurityUS.com. That's HomelandSecurityUS.com. And we're also simulcast by the Christians United Broadcasting Network. You can tune in there if you so desire to our program, and I'll give you the specific URL. It is the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.com, all spelled out. And again, thank you for joining us, and thank you for your belief and trust in us. Because right now, folks, who do you trust, and how do you? How do you know what's the news and what you should pay attention to, and what's just white noise? At any rate, Joe, it's good to be back with you. Let's. We've been a heavy news day, so
yeah, I'm glad you're back from your tropical vacation.
Yeah, tropical vacation.
I say that jokingly because he went about an hour away from where we live, and it's anything but tropical.
And it was just actually a 2-day. It was just for those who sent saying, "What'd you do? Where'd you go?" It was actually it was my birthday, my wife's birthday, and our anniversary combined together, and we have not been away in anywhere together. I think in 8 years. And it was basically just an overnight deal where we just had a good time. And when I say good time, that means dinner together and getting her saying, "Hey, this is the first time we've had dinner in 2 years."
And that's the truth because you guys never eat together, unless it's a holiday or a.
Exactly. In terms of like a normal day. So anyway, that aside, I want to thank you very much for all the kind wishes. We also have, but we've got so much news to get into. We've got, from Boston to the Ryson case to what's going on with this. Folks, in case you didn't catch this, I did this kind of on the run, and I won't get into the whys and hows of this.
And he says on the run, he means from the hotel bedroom to the hotel pool, I think.
I never saw a pool. No. When I say on the run, I mean in the car and trying to get things. Did you ever have, folks? Did you ever have writer's block, or you want to?
After the show, you and me were talking, and you told me how long it took. You said it took X amount of hours to put together that article. And when we would travel, stay overnight, which was pretty much every thing. Every other day we would be somewhere working a case, insurance investigation case, and from the hotel room, he would amaze me. He would write an article that would be a great article in like 20 minutes, and boom, start to finish, done. But he told me, it took him like 3-4 hours to put that together.
Well, actually, 3-4 hours to finalize it. What I didn't tell you was the backside of this. I started this on Friday, actually, and I got a lot of input from a good friend of mine, just a great friend of mine. Okay, but there are this is one article of about 5 that what was published on our website, HomelandSecurityUS.com. The name of it is A Blood Trail from Benghazi to Boston. Was done in sections, and you folks don't really need to know the background other than the fact that it was very difficult because there was a lot to confirm on this. But what the bottom line on this is, and I'll just be very quick with this. People have a tendency to put things like Benghazi in the back of their minds. Well, what we saw in Boston, for one thing, was an artifact, if you will, of Benghazi. There are so many angles to what's taking place globally. It's just not one. You see, it's just not, for example, it's just not Islamic terrorists that want to kill the Western society, Western people. It's just not that alone. Of course, that's a factor, but it's not the only factor. There's motive, there's causation behind this, but there are also lies that are wrapped up in this too, because in this article, I have a link to, and this also appears on CanadaFreePress.com. If you haven't seen it or haven't read it, if you don't mind, just go ahead and reading it. And if you agree with it, then certainly spread it around via Facebook, like it, even comment on it at CanadaFreePress.com. But here's the situation. Remember, Joe, remember Hillary Clinton, when asked about Benghazi, she said, what difference does it make? Well, was it because of a protest or was it because guys out for a walk? Who decided to...
When she was testifying, she kind of snapped.
Well, very unstatesmanlike, very undiplomatic-like. Okay. Well, what we saw, and there's, like I said, there's 4 or 5 articles I have ready to go. But I had to break this out of, I initially started out on Friday with something totally different, and this is what I came up with, because there's so much information here that we'll get into with Boston. And with and it all comes back, folks. It all comes back to Syria. It does, even though these are Chechens. But anyway,
I'm interested to hear about that, the Syrian angle more than.
Yeah,
I want to hear what you have to say about that. And ask some questions because, and we can get into that whenever you want. But the new news from Boston, terror narrative falling apart, says Zero Hedge. An article from Zero Hedge from today says, we have no idea whether or not the Chechenian brothers, Tamerlan and
don't even try to pronounce
Tsar,
I
say Tsar for the other guy, the young one, were the Boston terrorists. Last night, I played an audio clip of Jay Carney saying that they will not charge the living brother as an enemy combatant. At the same time, they did not Mirandize him, and this is when last night you communicated with me through Skype and sent me the link to your article. And I didn't really read it while I was on air, but I did post it, and you sent me the important parts that were highlighted. Now, this is the situation, for those who might not know. Initially, right after the bombing, they had a suspect, a person of interest. This was a Saudi national. He was young, I'd say early 20s. He was said to be the person of interest in the very first news. When 9/11 happened, they came out and said Osama bin Laden. Well, this was the first person they were blaming or looking to see if there was more information about this gentleman, if there was evidence of this gentleman being involved in this crime of the Boston bombings. Now,
I can kind of summarize it this way, if you don't mind, only because it gets kind of convoluted. And this is why, folks, how convoluted this is. This is why it took me so long, because I was trying to confirm different things, and then I would speak to a source, and the source would say, well, I have so much information that, once again, it cannot be digested in one article. But here's the deal. Boston, the marathon. A young man by the name of Abdul Rahman Ali Isa Salmi al-Harbi, a Saudi national, ran from the scene, was tackled. He reportedly had burns specifically to his hands. Now, the pictures, however, of al-Harbi, and we're just going to refer to him as al-Harbi, show him in a hospital bed and in a hospital room. Different pictures, different positions, same person. He is a Saudi national. Now, you might not know the name al-Harbi. Why? Because it really wasn't widely reported. It was reported right after the bombing. And
still, at that, I mean, the name did not stick with me. I do not associate that name with any terror suspect from the Boston bombing. So, they said he was, that when they mentioned his name, they referred to him mostly as a Saudi national. Right.
And at the very same time, I was getting information from one source about this. Well, actually, both Joe and I were independently and then collectively, and then there was an issue because of the length of the name, and it just gets crazy. And imagine signing your name, Abdul Rahman Ali Isa Salmi al-Harbi.
6 names.
All right, and then we have, because of our position, we've got access to databases, for example, where you can verify certain information. Well, wouldn't you know that when I would access or attempted to access all of the databases that we have as investigators, that the information was blacked out on this guy? Not all of the information, just some of it. It was gone, erased, inaccessible. For example, if I wanted, or if Joe and I wanted to look up your Social Security number, your address, your phone number, your email address, or whatever particulars, prior criminal record status as a terrorist, whatever it might be, we could have, and oftentimes have had 30, 40, 50 pages worth of information. Neighbors, friends, associates, relatives. Well, it was blocked out. The only thing that we could get were certain pieces of that puzzle related to al-Harbi. Okay. Here's the deal. Al-Harbi was identified as the man, the Saudi national, who ran from the Boston Marathon explosion and had burns on his hands, burns on his body.
Okay, now who is stating that he ran away from the scene?
This was from eyewitness accounts. And now also at the very, very same time, or right around the same time, Glenn Beck comes out, and I think it was on Friday, said, folks, I've got, the White House has got to come clean on this, the media's got to come clean on Mr. al-Harbi, or I will on Monday.
Yeah.
Okay. That was part of it. Okay.
And let me jump in here real quick.
Sure, go ahead.
And you said you didn't want to really get into this too much at all, really, for the show.
Well, but I think people need to know this. What's going on?
I don't even remember what day the marathon bombing happened. Sometime last week, I sent you.
It was on April 15th. It was on Tax Day.
April 15th. Oh, yeah, okay. Tax Day. I sent you a link to a Bill O'Reilly show.
Right.
And Glenn Beck and Bill O'Reilly called out Alex+Jones, saying he is saying the government committed a false flag with these Boston Marathon bombings without any evidence, and he's a kook, a crazy,
right,
et cetera, et cetera.
You've got people supposedly on the same side eating their own, but okay. Yeah.
So now we have Glenn Beck coming out, and you and me watched an audio or video, 3-minute video. I'll post the link to the article in the chat room. Glenn Beck says Obama is covering up the truth of Boston bombings. Almost immediately following the Boston bombings, radio and former Fox News host Glenn Beck his news site, The Blaze, chimed in attempting to ridicule Alex Jones and InfoWars for labeling the events a false flag attack, running articles like, with absolutely no evidence, Alex Jones calls Boston Marathon explosions a false flag operation conducted by the government. However, Beck himself seemed to be the conspiracy theorist, saying he knows something those at the highest echelons of government don't want unearthed.
Okay, now there's a couple of elements here at play, and very, very important distinctions here, please, folks. Number one, when, for example, when someone, whether it be Glenn Beck or, well, let's say Alex Jones says, okay, this is a false flag conducted by criminal elements within the government. Okay, that's fine. Explain what that means. In other words, the criminal elements within the government could be, for example, just that. It's not the entire government. It's not the, so.
And Bill O'Reilly made an issue about him asking questions and actually lied on air about a Family Guy episode, of all things.
But you know that Family Guy episode that we're talking about? I know
the way the episode was put together to air on TV did not match the way it was put together. But that's still...
Okay, but listen, be carefully.
Different, because it was the same episode.
Right.
It was the storyline was the same as Jones was saying it was. He wasn't manipulating anything in a way or change. He didn't make up any clips or add extras on to the end as they seem to hint to.
No, but see, and here's the problem with the videotape evidence, or videotape documentation or video. If you present, for example, if you looked at the Family Guy episode the way Alex Jones presented it, which I don't have a problem with, you make a notation that this might be or this is out of sequence, is the way it was aired or whatever. So I can understand where people would look at that and say, wait a minute, that's not, it didn't happen. The sequence of events was shifted, for example.
Yeah, I didn't watch the episode, and I've never seen it, so I don't know.
Well, but see, here's the problem. People are asking the wrong questions. People are pointing in the wrong direction. People are looking in the wrong direction. Let's go back to Al Harvey, the Saudi connections here, and the two guys. And remember, right after, or here this past week, or even, I don't know, it could have been here within the last 48 hours or 72 hours, Drudge reported, everyone's reporting that now the authorities are looking for a 12-man sleeper cell. Didn't that just come, when did that come out?
That was on Friday morning.
You're muted, I think.
That was on Friday morning or over the weekend.
Okay,
that came out. I want to say, and you and Steve talked about this off air during a telephone call. One of the days we were in the office, I remember you guys having a conversation, and he said something along the lines of this: if this really was Chechnyan Muslims who committed this act, there is probably
oh yes, you're talking
5
about
to 10 more guys with him. Yeah.
Yeah, you're talking. Yeah, and I got to tell you, when you talk about Chechen, the terrorists, they're the ones that did the Beslan school massacre, for example.
See, I'm not familiar with that.
Oh my goodness, one of the worst, most horrific terrorist attacks in Russian history, if you will. Okay, but here's, let me go back to the Boston Marathon, the explosion. I will say this flat out: we are not getting the whole story on this, on exactly what happened, because number one, you've got two guys, two young people, who funded them, who funded their lifestyle. Now, Revere, Massachusetts, where where they lived. You've got to ask yourself, or you got to follow the money, I guess is what I'm trying to say here. The bombs themselves, look, not a lot of money to make, not a lot of knowledge necessary to put them together. The information is on the internet, has been on the internet for a long time. But the fact of the matter is, you've got to follow the money because someone is supporting these two guys. Now, this is a non sequitur going to al-Harbi. Al-Harbi's the Saudi guy that was initially named as a person of interest or suspect. He was being guarded. Remember that? Guarded at a hospital. Supposedly guarded at a hospital.
Sounds familiar to another Saudi who is wanted for a crime, allegedly, in the U.S.
Okay. Well, here's what happened with al-Harbi, and this connects the information that Glenn Beck has. This connects to the information that Jones has, and no one wants to talk about this. Yet again, it's all in the article at HomelandSecurityUS.com and CanadaFreePress.com. Well, during the normal course of the investigation, while al-Harbi was in the hospital, don't the investigators find out, hey, there's a deportation order for him under Section 212(3)(b) in the Immigration and Nationality Act regarding security and related grounds for terrorist activities.
Yeah, he was on the terror watch list. And as I don't look at the terror watch list, like when most people hear it, they think, oh, the guy's a terrorist, because we know how it's used.
Right, correct.
At least domestically.
But when you've got, okay, domestically, and here's the distinction. Here's a Saudi national living in the United States. Now he is subject to this particular section, 212(3)(b), Immigration and Nationality Act, regarding security and related grounds, terrorist activities. But see, that's completely unrelated to the Boston bombing. So here's a guy that was there at the event with injuries consistent, perhaps consistent with being part of the process, the explosive thing. He's in the hospital, and the investigators find out, oh my gosh, he's on this list. Okay. Now, that quickly, his name and the fact that he was on this list quickly changed. And how it changed was
in high places.
Well, yes, but don't forget, there were photographs, and you can still find them on the internet. I didn't publish the photographs. I did publish his address, however, 364 Ocean Avenue, Revere, Massachusetts. A fifth floor apartment, by the way. I do know the apartment, but fifth floor, 364 Ocean Avenue, Revere, Massachusetts, suburb of Boston.
We're not there now.
Well, right. But the fact is this. There are photographs out there of the FBI and DHS, or the FBI and police carrying out bags upon bags of evidence, okay?
Yeah, they admitted as much.
All right, fine. So now he is the focus, of he's on the radar for the marathon bombing. Well, at this point, John Kerry, the Secretary of State, and the Saudi Foreign Minister Saad al-Faisal had a meeting Tuesday morning, the day after the marathon bombing. And wouldn't you know it, 10 minutes before the meeting, they're always open to the press. The press said, hey, we're going to stop, they said, we're not going to invite the press in on this meeting. It was after that meeting that his status was changed.
Yeah.
Now, this is what Glenn Beck is referring to. When he's talking about an event, you might have heard, if you listen to Glenn Beck, he'll say event. He's talking about a file. If someone creates an event, the FBI, that is, it's a file on you for a particular person or particular action or event, hence the name. Well, wouldn't you know it, during this time as well, Michelle Obama goes to visit some of the people in Boston, at the Boston hospitals. One of the people that she visits was al-Harbi. Now, did she meet alone with him? And this is why it took me a number of days to really get, to find out what was going on. Well, nobody seems to want to talk about it.
And this is one of the questions I wanted to ask you. The FBI carrying bags of evidence out of his house.
Yes.
How do we know they weren't just packing for him?
Well, they probably were at this point in the end. I mean, at that point, no, because you look at the photographs. I mean, that they were treating it as a crime scene. But they might have packed them up and sent them off with compliments. Yeah, absolutely.
So we don't get to look at the evidence for ourselves of the people who planted the bombs or the book bags. We don't get to look and make a distinction for ourselves of this guy's guilt or innocence, or of the other two's guilt or innocence. And I say that because there is, in this Zero Hedge article, new information where there was initially claimed to be a 7-Eleven robbery conducted by these two Chechens, and the director of corporate communication at 7-Eleven says the surveillance video of the crime was not taken at the 7-Eleven, and that the suspect that did rob the 7-Eleven did not look anything like the Tamerlan or his brother. The suspect in the photos for that particular 7-Eleven robbery looks nothing like the suspects, Chabris says. Chabris is the director of corporate communications at 7-Eleven. Now, there's a MIT is where these brothers went to school, and
folks, that's not a cheap date, even with the scholarships. Okay, so once again, you've got to ask, who is funding these two? Who really?
There's a history of the FBI. There's a history of the FBI involvement with these two people, an openly admitted history. In 2011, they were interviewed. One of them was interviewed by the FBI.
This is correct. This is absolutely correct. The
mother says that they had an open 5-year relationship talking with her son, the younger one.
Right.
She said he knew where he was at all times. They knew what he was doing.
The FBI did.
This is what the mother says. Yes.
Okay. The FBI, or one thing
says the mother. Yeah, the mother says the FBI talked to the younger brother, or both brothers on a regular basis.
Okay.
Basically.
All right. One thing I can confirm, independent of any other news source, it doesn't matter. The FBI did know and have conversations with, did know, and had regular visits with the elder of the two, the deceased marathon bomber. Now, folks, we're putting this together, okay? I mean, but where does this El Harbi fit in? Some say, well, he's a relative of Osama bin Laden. Is that true? Do you realize that just about every individual in Saudi Arabia is probably a relative of bin Laden? I got to tell you, I mean,
they are the head family over there.
Exactly.
They have helped. Their relationship with people, their family's relationship with people in our government.
Exactly. Now,
presidents. You got pictures of George Bush Sr. holding hands with him or kissing his hand, and the oil deals they have together. Even Kissinger is involved. Remember the 9/11 Commission, when Bush appointed him to the 9/11 Commission, the family said, well, we don't want you to head this because unless you want to disclose the business ties.
Oh, yeah, and they wouldn't do that.
To the bin Laden family. And he said, I won't do the 9/11 Commission.
Okay. But folks, just to put this in perspective, just as Benghazi is the window to the CIA's weapons running operation to Syria, Boston Marathon attacks, and you're correct when you say the official story is falling apart, because there's lies every time you turn around. There's lies, and part of it is propelled by the media. But look, we've done a lot, and see, here's the other issue: people want to be first out with the information. we feel it's more important to be accurate than to be correct and accurate than to be first. Unless, of course, there's some overriding need to be first because of some threat. Well, that's not the case here.
Well, let me share this with you, and I don't know, you probably didn't have the same experience I did with this Boston situation, and I don't know if the listeners out there did or not, but like Sandy Hook, like 9/11, and all these other incidents that have raised questions in the past, this one did also. But I did not have the obsessive-compulsive need to go over every detail and story I could find. I actually tried to stay away as much as possible from this story.
Well, we have I don't know, a Manhattan-sized phone book of pictures and of documents related to this,
right?
And we've gone over it, but we haven't really published. For example, the photographs.
It just gets to a point where it's.
Well, here's the
people
problem.
Don't see through it by now. I mean, when you see the footage of SWAT teams taking people out of their houses.
Well, let's hold off on that for a second, because people are not thinking big enough. See, this is the problem where it lies. People are not thinking big enough. People, and with the exception of our audience, I believe that most people aren't thinking big enough, nor are they thinking on an international level. That we're dealing with internationalists. When you look at the various photographs that are analyzed, and I know that Alex+Jones had done just a tremendous job with respect to the analysis of the photographs taken, or the still images, to be more precise, taken of videotape footage of the finish line. You could pick out Saudis, you can pick out Chechens by their facial structure. You can pick out Navy SEALs, if you will, or subcontractors of the government there. I mean, they were all there. Really, they were all there at the finish line. And then you had, and I don't know how many people heard this, you had, I think it was Rob Dew's brother-in-law or relative who was working for the DIA running this marathon. Can you imagine running, I don't know, 26 miles, almost 26 miles, getting within a mile or so of the finishing point, and he reaches down to get a cup of water or something, and his supervisor pulled him out and said, "Hey, you look dehydrated. You're not going to finish the race, okay?" And the guy, under protest, "I can finish. No, you're not going to finish the race. So that shows a level of knowledge of some type of an event that's going to take place at the finish line. But what we are seeing here, and why we're going back to this, is now that other things have been confirmed, or now that the government has taken an official position on this, now we can look back and say and see where this is headed. But this has the fingerprints.
Have they charged the younger brother?
You know what? I'm not exactly certain what his status is. All I do know, that. Yeah, but I'll say this.
I'm going to look into it. I'm going to look that up.
This has an operational signature of a very large. This has the same operational signature as previous events, such as Oklahoma City and other.
Yeah,
and other events. Okay, now
what gave that away? Was it the all the personnel that didn't belong at the scene of the crime?
Half the crowd were operational assets, for crying out loud, at the finish line. Okay, for various government agencies or for foreign nationals. It just didn't make sense.
Private contractors, private hired mercenary contractors that were there. Blackwater.
Right.
Why? Why do you need the National Guard? Why do you need Blackwater at a marathon? Unless...
Well, once again, people are not thinking big enough. This is the thumbprint of an internationalist type of an operation. When I say that, I'm talking about international bankers. I'm talking about the people who are pushing for a single global government. And you might think, where'd that come from and why? And what are you talking about? Well, you're looking at the once again, the operational signature for an operation where there will not be any single point failure folks remember me talking about that? There's a plan, and then there's a backup plan, and then there's a backup plan to that backup plan. So they have all point failure.
In their minds, they have prepared for all possible scenarios and situations, and they have a strategy or agenda for whichever way the people go, whichever way the world goes. They have it mapped out, and they will. Right. They have a plan of action to handle it.
It would be like saying, okay, so we'll have a team of two people there with some ordnance, and then we'll have, there's another team there, perhaps believing they're engaged in a drill with perhaps some ordnance. Maybe they're trying to test out the dogs. And then you see all these pictures, and somebody comes up and says, well, we're right, we're correct by saying that, that there were two entities there were two subcontractors there from the government. Oh, no, there were two Saudi nationals there. Oh, no, there were two Chechens there. Oh, no, there were two DHS members there. Well, guess what, folks? You're all right. You see, and people are fighting over the minutia of this, when in fact the bigger picture, take a few steps back and take a look at the bigger picture. What does it reveal? See, in the thumbprint, it's just not one player. It's just not one player. And then off to the next major show. No. It's a number of players. Why? Because the goal here is something bigger than we've considered. Not when I say we, I mean people are considering. Because look at the aftermath. Look at what happened afterwards. And that's what I was trying to say, although not so eloquently, that last week. When you look at the aftermath, you have to kind of take a wait-and-see approach of the government to see where they're headed. Well, let's go back to Al Harvey, for example. Was he there? By all indications, absolutely he was there. Was he involved? I don't know. But we do know this. He was, instead of being deported, he was the subject of a high-level meeting between Secretary of State John Kerry and Saudi Foreign Minister Saad al-Faisal. And the press wasn't invited. And then all of a sudden, that deportation order was rescinded, and he was almost treated as a VIP. Okay, now, what Glenn Beck was talking about was this. Congressman Jeff Coburn, the congressman that, let me just refer back to my notes here to be absolutely accurate. Congressman Jeff Duncan was questioning Janet Napolitano. I don't know if you saw that. There's a link to that questioning in the article. Well, he was questioning about the involvement of Al Harvey in this case. And Janet Napolitano, in the very same manner as Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, was indignant, and she decided that she would not even dignify Congressman Jeff Duncan's question with an answer. Never answered the question. The question was basically, what did she know, and when did she know it? With respect to Al Harvey, was there a deportation order? Was there a deportation order that was rescinded? What she didn't know was Congressman Jeff Duncan had a copy of the initial order, the initial deportation order, the initial 212.3b order. And she wouldn't dignify. She couldn't answer the question. She just could not answer the question. The congressman was supplied with the initial order that showed that there was a deportation order against Al Harvey. That's what Glenn Beck was talking about.
Janet Napolitano dragged her feet, as the news article stated. One of them stated.
Dragged her feet?
Dragged her feet.
No, she outright lied. Well, okay, lied by omission, not by commission, I suppose, because she did not actually answer the question. But here's the whole issue. Okay, when you, and this is so maddening because we'll visit Alex Jones' site, and there will be dialogue with Alex Jones and InfoWars. He's correct, and Glenn Beck, he's correct in certain aspects. They're all correct. They shouldn't be fighting with one another because they're all correct. But look at what happened. Now the blowback. But keep Al Harvey in the back of your mind, because Al Harvey is not the real issue here. He's an issue, but he's not the real issue. So just keep him in the back of your mind.
It's like the president saying the president is the beginning and end of all decision making in the U.S. for the policy, and he's just a fill-in. He's just a face.
Right, exactly. He's
a patsy.
The puppet.
Yeah,
he's the puppet. And who's pulling the strings? Well, okay, so just keep Al Harvey in mind, because he is essentially a bit player in this.
He's pulling the strings.
Yeah. If I could do a Sesame Street voice, I would. So, all of this, what happened afterwards? Well, you saw a city in lockdown. You saw Boston in lockdown. You saw people going from hostile, or not people, but military assets and paramilitary assets, more accurately, somewhere between 9,000 and 20,000, it was estimated, going through the streets of Watertown and other areas of Boston that were, I mean, if you want to know what martial law looks like, you just saw it, essentially. People were being escorted back into their homes by paramilitary police, being told, no, you can't come out, you have to stay home. So what is that? Well, that's, by definition, that's martial law. All for, you're looking for one 19-year-old or one 20-year-old suspect. I understand how serious this is. I'm not trying to minimize what happened. But, folks, there were other assets there as well. What's troublesome, and you're not being told this, is there were other assets there as well. They were looking for other things too. You can count on it. Now, what other things? Well, how about wouldn't it be interesting if you see nuclear emergency search teams on the streets of Boston? Wouldn't that make you question what's really going on? Is it from an overabundance of caution? Now, you also had raids, and you didn't hear about this either. You also had raids or maybe you did hear about this. It was not widely reported, but associates, friends, and family members of the two Chechens that were arrested, raids in other cities that did take place. But then that's really not the issue. All of this is distractions. All of that is really part of the distraction. It comes down to a number of things, but if you look at and I'll just wrap it up by saying this, if you look at what happened after, or on that Friday when they had him cornered, and you look at that whole process, and then come to find out that there could be another dozen or so, maybe half a dozen, of Chechens, terrorists, on the loose. Well, we're going to see this play out again and again. And think of Beslan as well. Folks, we are being set up. I mean, did this happen? Yes. I mean, did the Boston Marathon happen at the hand of these Islamic terrorists? Well, by all indications, it did. I mean, if you look at the two suspects, I think a case can be made against both. But the other side of this, did they have help? And was there a level of involvement by DHS? And if there was a level of involvement by DHS, what was that level of involvement? And what were all those people there doing at the finish line that included the Saudis and the Chechens and like I said, even some elements of DHS and
the people who weren't running the race. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So now, I also talk about motive and causation for what happened. And I believe there was, I happened to see during my downtime, during the time I spent away, over the last 24 hours, a connection between, or some allegation that this was in response to our wars. Well, is that true? I mean, did these two young men just decide one day, or decide that that event was going to be the location?
Well, let's jump away from that.
Okay.
And let's look at, remember the Ricin letters that were sent?
Yes.
There's new information.
This is a perfect segue into that, because there are a lot of elements, common elements between. Now, I'm not talking there any direct relationship between Boston and the Ricin case, but there are a lot of common elements here from a law enforcement perspective. What's going on with the Ricin case? I thought we had that resolved. I thought that there was a man that was arrested for the Ricin case.
There was. Yes, there was. But
will that happen?
Not anymore.
Okay.
A federal judge this afternoon formally dismissed criminal charges against Curtis. Magistrate Alan Alexander signed an order of dismissal after prosecutors petitioned to drop their case, since the ongoing investigation has revealed new information into the Ricin letters that were sent to politicians and the president. April 23rd, with prosecutors apparently poised to drop charges against the Mississippi man accused of sending Ricin-tainted letters to President Obama and two other public officials, FBI agents are searching the home of a former Republican candidate in connection with the dangerous mailings. Paul Kevin Curtis, 45, was arrested last week for allegedly sending the threatening letters to Obama. U.S. Senator Roger Wicker and Mississippi County Judge. But Curtis has been released from custody amid signs that the case against him has collapsed.
It was during the court hearing yesterday that lawyers for Curtis contended that he had been framed and pointed investigators towards another guy who has an odd relationship with Curtis, an antagonistic relationship for Curtis, to frame the guy. James Everett Dutchke, I guess is his name. But
we covered this when this story first broke about the letters, and I think there's an article we read where the only connection that was seemingly possible was his initials and what was the way the letters were signed.
Right.
Well, that still doesn't make any kind of a case against him.
No, but it's funny because just much like the anthrax attacks, and there's a whole story behind those anthrax attacks of 2001, but and that ruined a lot of people's lives. I mean, you've got a situation here where when they went to Kevin Curtis, or Paul Kevin Curtis, Kevin Curtis is because of the KC initials in the note, but nonetheless, when they did the search of his house and such, they found no castor beans, no evidence whatsoever of any type of method. I mean, not even the same envelopes, paper, nothing. There's no evidence at all. But they arrested this guy in the story. And all of a sudden, just as quickly as he was arrested, they dropped the charges. They let him go. So what's the deal here? You know, you look at this and you just have to wonder.
Well, look at how they're handling the suspects with the Boston explosion.
Right.
The presumption of guilt instead of innocence until proven guilty. The media states it as the government wants them to, so the people have a preconceived notion in their head that these men are guilty before appearing in court. And
well, I don't want to make, but wait, I don't want to make your head explode, because now that the new suspect in the Ricin case, this Dutschke, whatever, he's not only was an unsuccessful Republican candidate for the state representative position in the Tupelo area, he is now being paraded out as, get this, a radio broadcaster, a member of the National Rifle Association, and above all, a conservative, okay, a staunch conservative. So now there's a case being made, and maybe there is evidence there, but this guy also was a subject. This Dutschke was arrested in January on child molestation charge in connection with a supposed assault on a 7-year-old girl at a Taekwondo studio he operates.
7 years old.
Yeah. And in March, he was named in a 3-count felony indictment accusing him of fondling a victim under the age of 16, and he's out on bond. He had previously been convicted of indecent exposure, but now what, is everyone just insane? But anyway, he's now being framed, or not framed, I don't want to use that word, he's now being described in the media as this conservative icon in the Tupelo area, where he's not only this conservative icon, but he's a very intelligent but very bitter man, and a very perverted man. But here's the thing: he's got conservative principles. Now I don't know too many conservatives who would go molest children and have a past like that and be a true conservative, or be a true conservative, I guess is the best way, and an NRA member. But the big thing is, he's an NRA member, conservative Federalist, a member of the Conservative Federalist Society, honorary member or honorary chairman of the National Republican Congressional Committee for Mississippi. What's going on here? What's going on here with this? In fact, you can even find pictures of this guy, this new suspect, with him standing next to Mike Huckabee, I believe, among others. So what's taking place here? What's the larger picture? Why did they? First of all, you have to ask yourself the question: why grab, like almost immediately, this Paul Kevin Curtis and charge him, and then drop the charges without any type of public explanation, and then pick this guy up, this James Everett Dutschke from Tupelo? Do we know? Joe, I'm asking you that. Do we know? We really don't. So we have to let this play out as well. But the fact of the matter is, can we at this point believe anything that we're hearing on the media? Can we in fact believe? Is this a case of just mere incompetence on the part of authorities? Or is this something more? Because just imagine being framed for ricin. It wasn't a very good frame job if they didn't come out with any evidence, and the case was dismissed that quickly and that unceremoniously. So there's just something that doesn't feel right at all with this ricin case. We're not getting the whole truth on that, just as we didn't get the truth on the anthrax deal. And yet, now there was and you reported this, Joe, there was another ricin, a case of ricin that was another case. Today they found today, was there not, of ricin at a military installation. So
that's something you told me about.
Okay.
I'm not familiar with the story itself of any new.
Yeah, in fact, outside of suburban D.C., there was a case where there was and I have to wait, and I would suggest everyone else wait too for the verification as to what this is. But I guess we spent the first hour going through the Boston issue. There's more to it than this. You've got the thumbprint, the operational thumbprint of the International is basically behind this, the operational signature for where there's not going to be any single point failure. You've got the presence, indeed, of all of these people in these groups at the finish line. You've got the other thing too. We did not mention the drill going on. Yes, there was a drill going on. Yes, people announced that there was a drill taking place. Yet the officials are either not saying anything about it or outright denying it. Have we seen this before? Absolutely, we've seen this before. But what are the results? What in the end, what are the results? Well, you've got residents ordered out of the homes, their own homes, at gunpoint by SWAT teams.
In my opinion, aside from who carried out the bombings, this is the second most important story.
Well, this might be the most important story.
This is what we've been talking about. I'll post the article in chat again right now. You can find it on the Mail online, the Daily Mail. The controversial moment, SWAT teams ordered innocent neighbors out of their houses at gunpoint during door-to-door searches for the Boston bomber. A startling homemade video now shows the terrifying moments where Watertown residents were forced out of their homes at gunpoint as SWAT teams performed door-to-door searches, I'm sure without warrants, as they hunted for the second marathon bomber, the article states. I would throw in there the alleged suspect, second suspect. They're already saying he is the bomber.
Well, yeah, and my wife together, obviously, this morning over breakfast, we were having a spirited discussion. She said, "Please don't talk about this stuff." And I have to, but two things. One, even without respect to the Miranda situation and the treating him as an enemy combatant and such, we're losing our rights as Americans. That's the story. Well, who's behind it? It's not any one group of individuals. It's not any two people. Or any two groups. Or it's all the above. I mean, there's criminal elements in all of the above. I'm not talking about your neighbor who works for the police department, who's a nice guy who comes home. No, I'm talking about the people in higher levels. Perhaps one of the most striking photographs I ever saw, and you've really got to see this, folks. It was published by InfoWars. No, we're not doing an infomercial for InfoWars, but April 17th was the day it was published. And I don't know if you can find it, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sure you can. I think it was called Papers, Please. There was a photograph from Nazi Germany in 1938 and a photograph from Boston in 2013. It gave me the chills to look at this because it's exactly what martial law looks like. And this is exactly where we're headed. And
what would you do? What would I do? What would listeners, this is a question to all of us. What would we do in a situation where the city we lived in had some kind of... now, this wasn't anything near a 9/11 terror attack, but this wasn't a small matter either, as hundreds were injured. Many lost limbs. I think 3 were killed, or 3 were killed. Hundreds were injured.
3 perished at the time of the bombing. But
one was an 8-year-old girl,
right.
I think. So it was not. I mean, it was a very horrific scene, I would imagine. I've never.
He's an 8-year-old boy, by the way.
I've never witnessed a bombing or been around the aftermath of one.
Well, we'll see. Regardless, if you like you mentioned, you go to 9/11. Look what happened. The city was shut down, but my goodness, that was a horrific,
right.
A very large area, and of course, a huge event.
This is more reminiscent of Katrina, what they did in Katrina, than what they did. I mean, there was nothing on 9/11 the police did, and if you look at the photos, these don't look like SWAT team members. These look like special forces units or military operatives, as they're wearing all camouflage,
right?
Camouflage.
A lot of the BDUs and such, but
they've merged themselves.
This is a paramilitarization of our police departments. You want to know where the funding goes, for example, from DHS. This is what your tax dollars are buying. This is where the funding goes. You're buying these armored vehicles. You can deny, Janet Napolitano can deny, Congressman can deny all day long. Of course, we don't have these armored personnel carriers on the streets of America. Oh yeah, well just look at Boston, and there you have armored vehicles, with gun ports and people sitting in positions on top of the vehicle, as if they were in the streets of Afghanistan, for crying out loud. This is what we have. Folks, we're up against the top of the hour. In fact, we're a minute late. Got to tell you, I want to thank you for joining us. More news on the other side, but pay very close attention to what you're not being told about Boston. And this is a story, this is an accounting that is still taking place. It is still evolving. Things are still happening about this. Not on the terrorism side, but on the freedom side of things.
Yeah, and we're going to get into who's saying what actions are being looked at to be taken because of this, and
right on.
Hitting that and other news on the other side. Stay with us. You're listening to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, Tuesday, April 23rd. We'll be right back.
Hi folks, Doug Hagmann here. You might know me as the co-host from the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, or as a frequent guest on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie. If you're like me, you're tired and confused over today's headlines. You just don't know where to turn for accurate, concise information about really what's going on, what's truly going on in today's society. If you don't know where to turn for accurate, well-researched, and properly vetted news, I've got a suggestion. In fact, it's a requirement. Bookmark Canada Free Press. That's CanadaFreePress.com on the internet. It's just not for Canada. It's for news across the world. Judy McLeod, founding editor, has put together a vast array of talented writers like Kelly O'Connell, Daniel Greenfield, Dr. Eileen Johnson-Powell, a lot of guest columnists, very talented writers. Folks, that's Canada Free Press at CanadaFreePress.com. Now mobile friendly. Follow on Facebook, because without America, there is no free world.
Survival of the fittest. In any and all situations, survival is your number one priority. That requires being tough and thinking smart. And the folks at Freeze Dry Guy are going to help you do just that. They have the long-range patrol ration entrees, what they call the Brick Pack. When you're in survival mode, it is absolutely the best item for your survival pack or bug-out bag. You can go farther, faster, and carry more food with the LRP cold weather ration entrees. Not only do these long-lasting, durable entrees help sustain you or your family through the harshest environment or situation, they are by far the most delicious of their kind. No contest. With a variety of tasty entrees, you can't beat the LRP Brick Packs. Let Freeze Dry Guy help you in your survival situations. Go to freezedryguy.com. That's freezedryguy.com. Or call 866-404-3663. That's 866-404-FOOD.
You better wake up fast and listen to this, America. The Obama campaign has launched attack squads disguised as truth teams dedicated to intimidating and silencing all political dissent carried over the internet that criticizes the Marxist Obama. Truth squads specifically focused on covering up Obama's endless trail of lies, corruption, and subversion, and using the Gestapo power of our own government to police and censor the internet and shut down websites that dare to carry the real truth about Obama's Marxist coup. Remember the names of these Gestapo-style agencies at work right there in your neighborhood: KeepingHisWord.com, KeepingGOPHonest.com, and AttackWatch.com. KGB, SS, and Gestapo-style police-state gangster organizations at work to silence the important voices of patriot dissent, some of which have already been shut down by Obama's orders. Adolf Hitler would have been proud. We're the 21st century Tea Party patriots.
Hi, friends. I ask you every day, what steps have you taken today to prepare? Do you have enough food to last you for 90 days, you and your family? Well, do you have enough stored water for 90 days? How about an emergency survival kit? Well, ladies and gentlemen, I've got a solution to these questions, to these problems, to these issues. Just give a call to my friends at American Survival Wholesale, 818-720-0759. That's 818-720-0759. Or better yet, go to their website, AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com. That's AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com. Tell them that Doug and Joe sent you, and you will receive a full-size King James Bible in a waterproof case, free, with every survival kit or purchases over $199. That's only if you tell them that Doug and Joe Hagmann sent you. That's AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com. Don't procrastinate, because they've got products that work on any budget. Again, AmericanSurvivalSupply.com.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to hour number 2 of this Tuesday, April 23rd, 2013 edition of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. Joe Hagmann here, along with my co-host Doug Hagmann, who is with me today. Last night we did a show without him as he celebrated his birthday and anniversary. And we had Lori from Lori's News Talk Radio on, and I'm not sure he got a chance to listen to that first hour, but I know he did listen to the rest of the show from last night. But it was a great show.
Last hour, I think the last hour and 15 minutes.
It was a really good show. And also Saturday, for those who missed it, we had Pastor David Langford and Steve Quayle on.
That was a very powerful show, folks. You know, I would urge everyone, if you did receive benefit from that, just drop Steve a note or Pastor Langford a note, an email, whatever, because, man, there was a Newsmax article, I believe it was, and I think, did I hear you comment on this? I know I did hear you comment on this, where people are basically coming unglued today, how people are just going absolutely crazy.
Yesterday, there was an article from WorldNet Daily. Americans were snapping at alarming rates, I think was the headline. Here it is. Americans snapping by the millions. Terrorism, chaos, fear of the future in the age of Obama is how they worded it. But it's much more than the age of Obama. That.
Absolutely.
I mean, Obama plays a very small role, almost minute role in all of this big picture, in the big picture. And as to why these people are feeling about it, but
I got to tell you, folks, this is why we've got programs with Pastor Langford and Steve Quayle, the spiritual side of this, because if we do nothing but provide all this information, all this bad stuff, well, what's the flip side to this? What's the antidote to fear? It's knowledge and spiritual preparation, as well as practical preparation. You can have all the silver, gold, and food stored up and everything else, but if your head's not right, if your spirit is not right, if your heart's not right, you're not going to survive what's coming. So you've got to look at this in its entirety. So it's no wonder that people are kind of snapping in, as they say it, in an alarming rate. So, once again, the spiritual side of this, the spiritual component of this, you've got to have it. You got to really grasp onto it. But again, we spent the first hour, and then just Joe and I were talking during the break, saying, "Wow, that was a long first hour about very few things." Not really, not from my perspective. After sitting back and thinking about this, and talking with my wife, and talking with other people about this, I don't know if people are actually getting the entire Boston thing, where this is headed. Well, and you've got Bloomberg now.
That's exactly where I'm going.
Okay.
To Bloomberg and Rand Paul. Mayor Bloomberg says interpretation of the Constitution will have to change after the Boston bombings. In wake of the Boston Marathon bombings, Mayor Michael Bloomberg said Monday the country's interpretation of the Constitution will have to change to allow for greater security to stave out or make sure there's no future attacks.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, do you believe that because we're not driving in horses and buggies because of
let me ask you this. There were cameras all over the place, right?
Right.
And where this incident happened. There was footage of the bombing on tape. There was footage, even if a marathon was not being run there.
Right.
There was still surveillance cameras running 24 hours a day, videotaping all over Boston. And New York City is one of the worst cities. They have over 40,000 video cameras, closed circuit TV video cameras.
Second to London in the UK.
And Bloomberg, it's interesting to hear him say this. We're going to have to take away your freedoms to make you more secure. He says, the people who are worried about privacy have a legitimate worry. But we live in a complex world where you're going to have a level of security greater than you did back in the old days, if you will. And our laws and our interpretation of the Constitution, I think, have to change. No, Mr. Bloomberg, our interpretation of the Constitution does not have to change. The Constitution does not have to change. Your, as one would read or say, if you were preaching the gospel, you would be a false preacher or a deceiver. You're doing the same thing here, just with the Constitution. And how is it? In this, we went through this common sense debate during the Sandy Hook aftermath. How is one person's actions, or we don't know if that was even the case, if that Lanza, the son of that Nancy Lanza, was the one who did these shootings. But why would his actions require me to lose freedoms? I'm not calling for more safety. I don't need more security. I feel very secure. I have protection of the Lord, and I know that if He wants me to be gone from this world, I'll be gone from this world, whether I like it or not.
Well, with security, I understand that, but let's talk about what Bloomberg is saying first.
And that's I'm bringing it back to. He's saying basically, well, he's not basically. He is saying, this is his exact words. We live in a complex world, and we're going to have a level of security greater than you did back in the olden days. Our laws and our interpretation of the Constitution have to change.
Well, look, what we're seeing in the terrorist attacks is specifically Boston, because that was the most recent.
Right.
It's a game where the object is to change people's behavior. It's social engineering, and its endpoint behavior is a society that's being conditioned for subjugation.
And he finishes off his comments. The article says Mr. Bloomberg, who has come under fire for the New York City Police Department's monitoring of Muslim communities and other aggressive tactics, said the rest of the country needs to learn from the attacks and the other tactics